whatever I speak now will be perceived as like conflict of interest because I am from like the AI background for the last 11 years. I am building a company in this space. So, uh, like knowing all of this, I'm still going to say this. AI still is just a tool. It's just an enabler. It's not a replacement.
All right,
Sounds good.
perfect. But yeah, by the way, quick introduction, right? So I'm Tarun Singh. I lead the marketing vertical here at ProBlog, and at the same time, I also look over marketing at ValueBound, as well as I take care of stuff over at Digital Experience Live, right?
Mm.
So couple of multifaceted roles. Uh, what we do is we try to understand from visionaries like you, right, founders, market leaders, thought leaders, what is happening in this space today, and what would we like to make out of this, right? Things have changed in the last 5 years when it comes to AI. Things have changed a lot when it comes to customer experience, right, and how it has been evolving. And yeah, based on that, I would like to first structure a conversation. But before all of that, why don't you introduce yourselves to the audience members, just that you know the podcast is being recorded and you can share more about you, more about your company, and then we'll take it from there.
Cool. So nice to meet you, Tarun. My name is Ashish. I I'll go back to my background with stating I'm originally from India. I've lived last 11 years in Europe, studied from IIT Roorkee, then did my master's in Switzerland, then did a few jobs in startups in Germany, Belgium, and living for the last 6 years in London. I started my career working in big companies such as Oracle and Sony. Around 2013-14, I had the instinct of pursuing machine learning, which was the name for AI today, as we know it. It wasn't this big, but it aligned with my skill sets of being good with math. And I'm originally an electrical engineering graduate, but I had a knack for computer science, so it was a perfect intersection between the two. So I pursued that. I worked at different startups after working in those two big companies, including Tractable and Revolut. And Revolut is a massive success story in the UK and now in the world. I was part of Revolut for 4 years when it scaled from just being a unicorn to becoming a $45 billion company today. So that has been a crazy, fun, crazy experience to be able to work with them, lead a team, building the entire computer vision stack, automating all KYC, fraud detection within the startup. And I also had a brief stint at a construction tech company doing a bunch of VR, AR, and AI work. And then most recently, for the last 4 months, 5 months, I have been working on my own startup. So I'm co-founder and CEO at Native, which is an AI startup that is the AI culturalization engine for all visual content that is out there.
Yeah, actually, would love to talk more about detail. I was just looking at what you guys have been doing, right? And please correct me if I'm wrong over here, but it actually enables localization of content, specifically image content, across different verticals, like different nations, different languages, uh, and just like makes content more easy to absorb by different audiences, right? So I can create content today. Let's say I can create a guys who posted on Instagram, right? I can write it in English. And maybe someone in Maharashtra can read it in Marathi, right? Maybe someone in
Yeah,
Tamil Nadu can, and that's a great start, right? So first of all, like, how do you think like you got this idea first, and secondly, how do you think AI has been revolutionizing the consumption of content around us? That'll be your first question to you.
yeah, great question. So, firstly, the origin, right? So, me and you both, we share this amazing country called India that we grew up in. So, it's India speaks like 22 languages officially, and we know like there is so many dialects and smaller languages. so many different cultures and so on. So what happens is English and Hindi are only like the two main macro languages that we know of that is shared across the country at a wider level. But in reality, there are people we know that would really absorb that content much better if they were fed that content in their own dialect, in their own language. So coming from India already is a background enough for me to think about this. But then also I lived in Europe for 11 years. Europe is like India in many ways, the entire continent, I mean, in that it has different languages, different cultures as you move from like every 50 kilometers. Belgium speaks 4 languages, Switzerland speaks 3 languages. So I kind of empathize with this multiculturalism that we live in. And our thesis has been that AI, especially, but technology in general, has reached a point where we can codify all of those nuances to a level where you don't need to like necessarily know English or know a specific language to absorb the content. That content can come to you natively in your own language, culture, whatever. So that has been the insight. Now coming to how AI is changing all of this. So essentially what we have been hearing about this term called generative AI. I know it's a cliche by now, everyone uses it, many people misuse it, but truly what generative AI has done in two different forms, one is text and one is images or visual, which is videos as well, is it has kind of um, done a step function change. Firstly, in text. So we used to have Google Translate for a while, right? But Google Translate didn't really work on sophisticated AI models previously. It was working on some techniques such as bag of words and so on. So it would learn what sequence of words in English correspond to what sequence of words in Hindi. But it wouldn't make mistakes because there is like so much out there in sequences and so much phrasing, proverbs, humor. Now these kind of models, which are transformer models, which are auto-regressive, they can learn an insane amount of data. So the level of translation accuracy has just gone wildly up. And then on the image side, if you must have seen those mid-journey images, those
Oh,
the recent chat
yes.
images. It not only shows you how good they have become in the quality of image generation, it also tells you from what you type to what it generates, how it understands every nuance of what you want to ask or everything around what you want to say. And the more you tell the models, the more it can grasp. Obviously there is a gap to fill there to make the model understand the most of what you mean to say. Essentially I'm trying to tell here that for the first time ever, we have a technology that truly understands culturalization. And that is what we are trying to basically use and add value in the supply chain of things where this, like we have the big brands like Coca-Cola or
Hmm.
Kit Kat.
Correct.
There are some brands which do explicit work on culturalizing to different countries or TV shows. So we have American Idol, which was localized to Indian. So that's a very high level of localization, right? When you encapsulate the entire nuance of like how the show should be done in India. So not going to that level altogether, but there are levels to it, right? So there are some marketing visuals, for example, that could be targeted to like the Tamil audience in India or the Egyptian Arabic audience in Egypt. So there is a lot basically to be done, a lot of gap to be filled here. And that's where we think like the technology is right now, right there.
And I think that's where my next question actually comes in. I think it's not just about training, right? It's about how these models are becoming that much bit more human when it comes to interaction, when it comes to understanding the emotions, right? And I'm obviously not the kind of guy who would say, like, they're becoming sentient or whatnot, but I mean, the idea that now you can invoke more emotions by these models, right? Whether it's the nostalgia of it or whether it's understanding those small references that these guys used to make, like, these dubs used to make earlier in the day. How do you think that's going to affect the small creative now? I think that would be the answer, right? Because now we are seeing this rise of creators all across the globe, right? People are dubbing anime into different languages. They necessarily did not have the equipments to do it earlier. Now they do, right? Uh, People who are creating. content creators out of the blue and giving them a voice, giving them an emotion, a feeling, the whole spectrum, right? And how do you think, like, that's going to change the industry now? Because when we talk about culturalization, now people have the tools, I would say the necessary resources to make, I would say Leonardo DiCaprio talk in Punjabi and just have to Basha song. That creates a whole new generation of content. But where do you think you're headed in that case?
So, like, whatever I speak now will be perceived as like conflict of interest because I am from like the AI background for the last 11 years. I am building a company in this space. So, uh, like knowing all of this, I'm still going to say this. AI still is just a tool. It's just an enabler. It's not a replacement. This is also a cliche by now, but I will explain that. Essentially, all of AI that we are seeing around us is just an exponentially more sophisticated way of interpolation of the world around us. It's just the interpolation. Interpolation is the key word. It is exponentially sophisticated, but it is still just the interpolation. What I mean by that, we have to remember all of these AI models are still trained on data that one way or the other is produced by humans. All of the text on the internet, all of the images drawn by artists, even if for free. So don't want to go to the, like that argument about the ethics, but all of this is still bound by the human imagination. So to come to your question about what's going to happen with this whole creator thing, this is like just like industrial revolution. We used to apparently use our body to like do all the hard work directly, right, on the farmlands, but then we invented machines. It does not mean that we have humanless farms anywhere in the world. There is at least one human supervising the entire thing. Similarly, in creator economy, we will now have, I mean, they should be happy because you have insane amount of tools now. So you can get lot more content done. That's one. But the second thing is creators can't no more be lazy. You can't be lazy in the sense you can't do interpolation work now. Interpolation has to be delegated to AI. Anything that's extrapolation, that is out of the ordinary, the creative muse in you, like the new thing, something new hits, and then we all talk about, yeah, this new weird thing becomes popular, and then everyone follows that new trend. That is going to be the differentiator for creators who add value. I will tell you one example, which is a very, I don't know who the audience for this podcast is, but an Indian relevant example, which is back in the day when we didn't have internet, a lot of plagiarism used to happen in the movie industry, and you know what I'm talking about, like in songs, in
I
movies.
completely understand.
Less of that can at least openly happen. People are pushed to think more nuanced narratives, more real narratives, because audience will just be like, yeah, I've seen that movie already in English or in Tamil, like, you know what I mean.
But while diving into that, right, I just had one extra question to the last one, which is enablement of smaller teams, right? That's the first point. The smaller teams giving competition, I would say, to the bigger players in the industry, right? And then we come to the layoffs of, like, these bigger companies reducing their tech team size to increase their dependencies on these new tools, right? I won't call them AI, I won't call them just these new tools, right? When we keep all these three factors together, we tend to increase just the sheer number of solutions in the market. And I think my biggest question is going to be, do you think we are, because of this abundance of whether you call it resources or knowledge or rather just the time, right? Abundance of time in this case. Do you think we as a technologically led civilization are leading to a place of creating solutions for problems that don't exist?
Yeah. So the macroeconomic theory of supply and demand, when you have too much supply and too little demand, right? So the supply keeps going in all directions. It starts overfitting to specific demand, which is just noise, maybe. We have an abundance of supply for sure, like in terms of what you like, even like what you want to eat, for example, and that's why there's a health crisis. Uh,
Oh,
whenever
yeah.
I'm in India, like I just notice how easy it is now to order food and order especially unhealthy food, that to the point where it is detrimental, like actively detrimental to my health. So yeah, I mean that's one example of like just over availability, too much problem solving. Like I don't need my groceries in 10 minutes. Genuinely don't need in 10 minutes.
Oh yes.
Again, due respect to Zepto, but like all of this is the point I was telling you about, because there is intense competition. Everyone is fighting for insane amount of quality, right?
I think it's the unit force, right? Like the unit of effort. Everyone is putting that much more effort into just creating something that much better. While forgetting
Yeah.
to ask the question, does it need to be that much better? Are we just not okay with what we have?
So thing is like there's also like always behind all of the magic, there is something right behind all of this. So behind Zepto, there is all of those unsung heroes who are like driving in the absolute like
Oh
unhealthy
yes, yeah.
manner on the roads, like risking their lives. Behind ChatGPT, there is like, I don't know, trillions of human hours spent by now, and I'm not kidding, on like labeling the data, which feels like magic, but it's just interpolation of all of that. So yeah, so there is like a lot of intense push for becoming the next big thing. Basically there is a void after that period where Google, Facebook in the tech space, for example, were the
Oh
big
yeah.
players. You have a void to fill, so there is a race to be had. So to win that race, which I don't know if there will be one single player like there was in the 2000s, uh, to win that race people are doing anything to get there, right? And in doing that, just like solving for problems that might not even exist. So you are right, but again all of this comes also at the flip side of, as a society, ask yourself this question: are we happy net happier than like 10 years ago? So yeah, it's a bit of both, right? Like I think whenever I'm like conflicted with the crazy increase in everything, I always try to also keep the Gartner hype cycle in mind. So at the core of all this, at the core of most of our discussion is this AI insanity, right? I still think it is going to reach a realistic realization point where things will start settling down. Like, guys, hold on. There's a limit to this thing. And I'm coming from the background, so I'm saying this, but from knowing as much as I know of how these models work, which by the way, the fundamental building block called transformer was released or invented in 2017, so which is already 8 years ago almost. So knowing what I know, there is a limit to all of this. For now it's just being pumped and powered by data and more labeled data. So we will reach that point where it starts saturating and in fact coming down, and then there will be more of like a steady state state of affairs. Today as we speak, it is right now on that uprise and everything is crazy. So man, it's also a matter of when you are recording this podcast. If you record this 1 year later, there will be a totally different take on all of this. And who knows, I might
Oh
be
yes.
wrong, that we are maybe going to go even higher up in the hype, because you never know.
I
Humanity.
mean, I agree with you on that, Ashish, because I'm not sure if you remember, but there was this time between that early 2000s. Okay, so like the late 1990s, right? Smartphones came out. Like I would not call them smartphones, but phones that could be, taken with you and could do certain amount of smart work, like emailing and everything. Then this time came around that early 2000s where phones just became that much crazier. I mean, for the lack of better word, right? Your phones could flip out, your phones could like, have weird kind of rotations, your phone was shape of a circle for some reason. You had that Nokia E series communicators where you could just have the full keyboard. You had those weird gravity phones, and I am personally think that we are in that stage today. When
Mm.
it comes to AI, nobody knows, hey, this is what we need. So they're experimenting in it, like, hey, let's make everything, let's throw all the things at the wall and just see what sticks. And thanks to that, I want to come to the next question, which is, I mean, like, this will be one of the, I would say, introspection, right? Since I personally feel that we are at that stage where the at that point of time, phone makers and at today point of time, software makers are just experimenting with everything. Hey, let's try a phone that rotates. Hey, let's try a phone that like switches into two and then joins into one and becomes a robot again. I mean, whatever, right? What do you think when we reach that downward slope of that curve? Where do you think we will be? And like, assuming that we reach that downward slope and don't go up in the next 5 years, where do you see as a whole, like, every this entire industry that is going bonkers with let's create Ghibli images to let's track each and every point of human data. Where do you think we can finally reach that maturity level with AI? I mean, in case.
Yeah, I mean, the analogous question to me is like, when does the iPhone insanity stop? Like iPhones keep getting more expensive. I own one, so like I am guilty as charged. So, um, but still, like it continues going on, right? Like the the craze about, so to speak, about iPhones because they provide some value, and similarly the craze about AI for now. I can't put a number on when this will start falling down, but how it will look like. So, firstly, one thing, like this is something Ilyas Askiver, one of the co-founders of OpenAI and like a visionary in the AI space, he said, right, data is like fossil fuel, and we are about to exhaust all of it, and then there is more human labelers, but we will also exhaust that. Like, just you can only get so much out of a human, like extract everything in the current state of affairs. And so these models, they at the foundational level, they will find a limit on how good they can be. So that will be the foundation layer, and then there will be just like sporadic moments of brilliance on the app layer, applications of this. Like cursor is just application on top, a very thin application layer on top of this, but it's such a moment of brilliance for everyone that
Sustainable.
it
Correct.
developers are using it. It's like people are betting that in 6 months, Anthropic CEO said in 6 months, 90% of code will be automated. Anyways, so when we reach steady state, I think there will be a more, there will be no more hype around the foundational models, at least the way they work today. But then there will be a more mature layer of the application layer building on top of the
Built on
foundation. Today, the application layer, including mine, on top of these foundation models are being built as if you are building a flat on top of a land where anytime a volcano can erupt. It's like you're just building, it's a very volatile territory, right? You never know what,
Yeah, correct, correct. Yeah.
that's the reality of today. But I think the more we progress in future, the more at least these kind of models, the LLMs that we know as of today, they will start reaching a point where us together can see, okay, I see they have reached a point. Like airplanes, when was the last time there was an innovation so it reached a point and now we're used to it. There'll be a point when we'll be used to it, and then there will be some small layers on top of it that will be done, and then there will be another step function upgrade from there. Maybe that comes from quantum mechanics. Maybe that comes from a whole different AI model that is not transformer but something else. Like Jan LeCun, who is like the whole AI head at Meta, he speaks a lot about this thing called JPA. He feels like bringing together the, yeah, joint embedding, something which is bringing together our 3D understanding of the world with those LLMs, because the LLMs right now, they are just sequence by sequence understanding models, but we do not just, you do not just treat things by sequence, you look everything all at once, you have a 3D view of the world, and that's the ultimate, according to him, path towards AGI. So that pursuit will continue, but this current state of affairs, I think, remains to be seen, man. If you ask me last year, I would say, yeah, one more year. But now I have to say, like, I don't know how many more years, but it will continue.
Yeah, that's great. By the way, Ashish, why don't you tell us more about what is happening in the space? I recently saw you were the A16Z speedrun, right? Very interesting thing happening in the space today. Uh, I'm sure there are a lot of new ideas that are moving around. So, while being in this ecosystem, right? And again, I promise will be the last question. I think we're already running out of time. But while being in this ecosystem at the center of where all the hype is being built, right? Where all the craziest new tech is being built, what is that one piece of advice that you would give a founder today, right? And again, like I know you asked like who's the target audience for this podcast, but I would say it's anyone and everyone who's interested in learning more about this stuff, right? So, what is the one piece of advice that you can give to someone by being at the center stage, right? And just telling them, like, focus on this bit. What would be that one piece?
Yeah. So I spoke about the void, right? Like that there is a void in the entire space because the paradigm has changed, right? Like the whole paradigm of how things are done is changed. So all the big players like Google, even Meta, or like let's name them Adobe, Microsoft, all of those like legacy big players, they suddenly have found like the ground slipping from below, almost as if like right because they have
Okay,
trained all
yeah.
of their thousands of employees on systems that are immediately redundant. So they are retraining thousands of people, right? Like, and
Yeah.
now there is like such a void in the market of like look at this Perplexity, which is such a new company challenging entire Google on their biggest product, which is a search. So for founders, the great news is this is truly a phenomenal and like I don't know, maybe a generational, maybe once in a century, maybe once in I don't know how many 100 years time that comes to start building. I know it sounds counterintuitive in the sense that hey, I don't know what tomorrow looks like, so why should I go out, leave my job and build? Um, if you have the risk appetite, or if you're just young, great, then you don't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
At a slightly later stage, like myself, if you have a good enough risk appetite, this is possibly the best time there has ever been to go out and build. And this is not me saying it. This is people like Mark Andreessen of like Andreessen Horowitz, like Peter Thiel, like all of those visionaries, like who have done it, who have made it, like who are the biggies of Silicon Valley. They are saying, according to them, with responsibility, that this probably is the best time there has ever been to go out and build. It was one of the reasons. It was a great pull for me that knowing what I know about AI, if I don't go out now and build something, it would be a shame. Like there's never going to be a better time because everything is being, all the rules are being rewritten. So you get the chance to become the writer of the next new Figma. Not Figma. Figma is new. The next new Adobe. The next new Disney, the next new Google. The next new Microsoft. The next new Dell. Like who knows? Like it. This thing impacts everything. Okay, all layers of software, even hardware, because hardware, the way you manufacture, then that changes. I mean, look at Nvidia. So
Oh,
this
yeah.
is a when founders like or who are aspiring to be founders, those people should really look around and sense that everything is changing. And even especially in India, I think there is a lot more entrepreneurship coming along. I know in our culture, like at least when I was growing up, everyone's parents had like a service job, and like we were always
Hmm.
told that have a lot of savings, like do a job, save, like not too much risk. But I think even that paradigm doesn't hold anymore. You will be at loss if you think that way. You should go out and build stuff. And the good news is, even if you fail, as an employee of Google, which is maybe the one of the most prestigious jobs to be had, you are still actually day by day reducing your value because you are stuck with the old systems. Because these are legacy companies built with systems that is hard to change. You know, big organizations, big anything is slow to move. That's why startups
It's
work,
so,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
India, do you really think across these like 100 years, India should only have two Olympic gold medalists? It's just the bureaucracy of the huge size which doesn't allow for people to shine. Similarly, it's just the bureaucracy of these big companies which would not let them move as fast and allow them to like allow the good people within to raise their voices and go
True.
and build great. And hence, and actually it's even worse, like there is a lot of infighting, right? Like in many big companies, because they want to
Yes.
change products, and it's very ugly when you have an established business. It's a much harder problem to solve, trust me, than starting from zero to build something new. So, I mean, yeah, all in all, with all my genuine intentions, it is the greatest time to build. There's also a quote from A16, which was a great experience. Thanks for mentioning that. I was in Silicon Valley for the last 3 months. It is their motto for this particular time of our civilization, which is it's time to build. So.
It's time to build. It is definitely time to build. But yeah, I mean, it's been such a great conversation, Ashish. Uh, got to learn a lot from you. Like you said, right, enterprises, they are generally slow. We are trying to capture that market by the way, helping enterprises move that bit faster. So we build custom AI solutions for them. Um, and yeah, I mean, like, I really personally believe that with the ease of building, with the ability to learn anything within seconds, with the ability to execute in less than that, right now is definitely the best time to build.
It is, man. Yeah, I mean, it would be a shame if like people who want to and are not able to. I would be happy to like even help people who like guide them, help them to go out and build. If you have got it in you, yeah, everything is out there. All the information you need. As you said, there is an abundance of knowledge, and people should go out, use it, create value. Especially India needs a lot of like pioneering work from youngsters to change many things and many of the things in the way they work today.
I think changing from I would say, the reputation that India has had for the last 20 to 30 years, right? Changing that, like, personally don't think right now as, I mean, right now is the best time for it, right? We have some of the greatest minds who have in India, like, who are from India, who are changing the world, even in terms of perplexity as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think right now is definitely a great time to build, and at the same time, when you talk about players, right now is the greatest time to build. But what if we were to talk about companies, and I promise this will be the last question, right? Where do you think some of the biggest companies are failing, and what do you think they should be focusing on today? Right? I mean, you're very right to mention companies are slow. Innovation really crawls at the speed of a snail inside a bigger organization. That's why I think, like, the leaner teams are working slightly that much slightly better. But when you talk about some of the biggest organizations, talking about Google, the whole feud between the Google Assistant and Gemini that happened, right? When you talk about Apple, the whole thing with the Apple Intelligence, what do you think is going wrong, and what do you think some of the biggest companies today should be focusing on instead?
Man, that's a big question. Like, I am not, I do not have the credentials to answer that, but I'll just give my thoughts, right? Like, I am no one to
Yeah.
comment those big companies. I haven't done enough in life to be able to say, but it is it is just, it's the nature of how things are, right? Like, inertia comes in your way. It's the Newton's second law of motion. Inertia comes in your way. First law of motion, actually. Um, so basically, examples of, again, you mentioned Google and their products in fighting, because uh, when you have a lot of things being built, right? Just take that analogy, right? So what we are saying is the foundational layer of how things work has changed. So you build you built a castle, right? And now we are saying not the top floor, but the bottom floor is going to be removed,
Mhm.
right? It's that kind of an analogy. Because why I'm saying that, because with the advent of AI, what has changed? It's not that the shiny outer layer has changed, right? It's not how you see Google. So the extreme example, exaggeration, is, hey, now everything needs to be in red. Sure, Google can change everything in red. That's an easier fix to do, right? Everything needs to be in the red color scale. But the paradigm shift is more at the most foundational level, which is the way code is written needs to change. The way documentation is done needs to change. The way security is done. The way, like, all of this. So, like, just an example of security, right? Like with
Yeah.
AI, because I worked at Revolut, I worked a lot at
Yes.
image security. Take your passport, like upload a random person's selfie with your passport to ChatGPT and ask it to generate a new passport and
It's
send it
done.
to any bank. No bank will deny it, even if they do any advanced checks. Like, it is so good right now that it's so bad. All of these, like, this is just an example of how the foundational layers of like security, coding, which is the bread and butter of all of these companies.
Mhm.
How do you do coding interviews anymore? Tell me. Like, do you do coding interviews the same way they used to do 5 years ago? How do you hire new people that are actually good? What is your criteria now versus 2 years ago of hiring a good software engineer? Do you need mid engineers? Do you need a separate product manager and a product designer? Do you even need like 5 engineers in a team with a product manager, or do you just need one engineer and a product manager? Do you just need a product manager who is hands on with vibe coding?
A technical product manager. Yeah, I mean,
So the thing is, think about it, like all of the organizational units, the way, and I'm telling you, most companies are actively thinking about it, and I'm no one hence to comment. Like, sadly, they will hire people from McKinsey who have even less idea to again, no disrespect, but they have even less idea of how AI works in general. So then they will have them to figure out how to make changes. This is how the world has worked. And like again, even VC world works in very old fashioned ways. So I am being funded by a VC, and I'm telling you, even VC world works in very old fashioned ways. So the short answer is, when you ask me like, how do you think that companies can improve? Like, short answer is, there is very little you can do in, I would say, disintegrate into entities, like, because there will be a lot of infighting. Google Maps want to evolve in a different way, Google search evolving in a different way. Instead of them raising tickets against each other, getting lost in human ego fights, bureaucracy, disintegrate them, let them function like, if that is possible. That maybe is a better way, because the smaller the team size, the more you can move quicker. And again, like, we have examples of 80% team staff reduction in Twitter or X, and still the company goes along. So there is that one insight, and then after that, I don't think there is much I can tell about how these massive companies would keep up. They are doing like all of that top level stuff, which is like kind of lobbying plus um tie-ups between these, right? Apple just did with Nvidia, Microsoft did with
correct.
OpenAI. So using your top level power is something they will obviously do, but at the bottom level, maybe smaller teams, smaller entities will help them function. I don't know. I am, again, man, I am a 10,000th of a person to be able to comment on these things. So yeah.
No, I mean, like you always said, right, every opinion counts, and at the same time, there's a lot that I feel that companies can learn from everyone. I think that's something that I have always felt. It does not matter, and I personally felt that, like, putting these biggest companies on the pedestal always takes out the human factor from them. Um, Tim Cook is human after all. Right? Sundar is also human after all. But I do agree with you. Between all that bureaucracy, between all those inner fighting, things do get lost. Smaller teams definitely do work well. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, Ashish, 45 minutes. I'm so sorry if I've taken like, too much of a time. I know you're a busy man. But yeah, I mean, this has been great conversation, to be very honest. Couple of really eye-opening things that I have learned. I'm so sorry I made you do all the talking, but I'm generally here to listen. I'll be honest, I'm generally here to listen to some of the greatest minds of time. I mean, that's all I'll say, right? I would want to, I'm not even just buttering you up, right? The idea is that there's a lot of knowledge that can be found on the internet, but something about this one-on-one human touch, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what really makes the.
Well, guess
I
what?
think that's
Podcasts are booming.
Oh my god. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
podcast, I think it's been the human nature. I don't know how it took so long for these things to happen, but just a one-on-one conversation with someone sitting on the other corner of the world, just understanding their perspective. It's
Yeah.
always been a great time. But yeah, actually, I totally forgot. I don't even hope this recorded perfectly well. I'm just looking at it now.
I
But yeah,
hope. Thank
we
you,
have had a
Tarun.
great conversation, and thank you so much, Ashish. Thank you so much for joining in. Would definitely be will be keeping in touch, telling you more about what Roblox does. I don't think I've had a chance during this podcast, but would love to see you grow. Would love to see more about your company. Yeah, and also once again, very great picks at the OpenAI A16Z speed run. Would love to see more of that. But yeah, is there anything that we could be maybe doing for you guys? Something that you would want when this podcast goes out? Mentions of you, mentions of, I think you mentioned that thing, you would be open to helping a lot of people, right? So you can also tag your LinkedIn so if people can want to reach out to you, they can also
Sure.
reach out to you.
Yeah, I can, like, on the email, I can send you like the links to my LinkedIn, our company website, and maybe my Amazon author book page, if people want to check out the books that that are out there. So yeah.
Perfect. That would be great, Ashish. Yeah.
Awesome. All
Awesome.
right. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Tarun. See you.